Right, the roof's arrived, but how on earth does it all go together? Well, hello again and welcome back to my channel. Now we have reached the stage where the roof is going on to my modular designed garden room or workshop. Now this is a complete departure, this roof, from my original idea of putting up the traditional joists, which would be OSB over the top and then EPDM roof over the top of that, the membrane. Now I've done that on my shed, which I built last year, which was technically really a dry run for the workshop, just on a much smaller scale. And to be honest, I was absolutely dreading it, the actual roof part. One arm in 6x2s or 7x2s up onto the top, to then put the OSB over the top and then the EPDM roof. Okay, but then I'm doing my homework on cold roof, warm roof, hybrid roof, and then so much conflict going on when you know, one person saying something online and it's contradicted by another. I've watched quite a few of the guys at Steve the roofer, and he does some really interesting stuff, but there's professional guys putting stuff up that he totally contradicts and says wrong. So a one-man band, I was starting to get really concerned about doing the roof structure, particularly the insulating. And then somebody put me onto the idea, had I seen these SIP panels, which are structural insulated panels, and the structural integrity, if you like, is within the panel itself, which requires no joists or underside or support from underneath. And I was like, that looked very interesting. And I watched a couple of videos, one from the Restoration Couple and one from Mr. Griffin. Is it Oakwood Garden Design Rooms, one of his many videos, and they both kind of demonstrated these, and I thought, this appears to tick all the boxes of what I'm after. So I got in touch with the company I dealt with is called Panel Cell, and I talked about my build. It was really helpful actually, technically, on the phone. And I talked about, particularly, it's a single span roof and the gap is 3.5 meters. Now my understanding is, I think technically for building regulations, they need to be supported every 2 meters. But because my garden room is permitted development and not planning permission, so I don't need building regs, I asked about the single span, which is 3.5 meters, and he got the span charts out, and he said still at that distance it will have a 100 kilogram per square meter downforce on the top. So if there was heavy snow, it hasn't been snow here for 13 years, that it will be able to take a downforce on the top of 100 kilograms per square meter, which I thought was more than adequate. So I decided to go ahead and purchase them. Now the SIP panels have been used in industry, I understand, for many years in things like warehouses and stuff, so they are used to dealing with industry, these kind of companies, although I think it could be a potential to branch out to much more along the ideas of garden rooms, particularly if you're under the 2.5 meters height restriction and you won't need actual joists to go across your timber, to go across your garden room, sorry. The downside kind of this is they are used to dealing with industry and not with one-man band type folk. So when all this arrived, let me just pan down so you can see the panels here and the trim or the edgings, the flashings. So when all this arrived, it doesn't arrive with instructions. It arrives with what you might call schematics, right? Now, I am not an engineer, I'm not a site manager, I'm not a foreman, I'm not a roofer, I'm just a DIY guy. But I have been in touch with them, I've had several phone conversations about installing them, and that's why I'm doing this video, and I'm taking a few minutes to speak to you now before the actual installation starts tomorrow, because you will probably have the same questions that I had when all this arrived on my front door. So let me take you through a few of the points and then how you'd actually start, or how I'm going to start tomorrow with some help. I've had to call in the cavalry on this one, there's no way I'm doing this on my own. So where's your starting point, and particularly in regards to issues around the flashing or the trim. Okay, so let's deal with getting the first panel on. Okay, if you were to buy this SIP roof as a complete set, what do you actually get Well, these panels, they come in different thicknesses. These ones are 80mm thick, and at the actual high point of the trapezoid ridge, it's 113mm. And the panels themselves can be purchased in either 6m or 7.5m lengths. Now, these ones I got from the yard, and there is a cutting fee for it, but I got the 7.5m panels cut in half to 3.75, which will give me a ever so slight overhang on the front and back. If I was to go for like 6m panels, there would be huge amounts of offcuts and huge amounts of waste and huge amounts of wasted money as well. So I got 4 panels cut in half, which give me 8 panels, and they're 1 meter wide, which gives you an 8m width, if you like. So one of these is going to have to be cut down the length when I install the final panel. What else do you get? Well, there are various amounts of, now you either call it flashing, ridging, trim, of all different shapes and sizes, and you get a, I'll put this up now, like a schematic, if you like, but it doesn't actually say where goes what. Now, I have had a couple of conversations with Philip at Panel Cell, and he's explained it to me. I'll talk you through it in a minute. And you also get the long fixings for installing the roof panels, these short ones, which are for tying down between the actual, when the panels connect, and also for putting the ridging on, the flashing on. And you get a load of these, which go on top of the fixings. And you also get this, which I had to email about today because I hadn't a clue. All right, so the theory themselves, the panels, it's pretty straightforward. You have, if I just bring it down to here, you can see there, you have a hook which goes over the top of the ridge. So you have a panel down and you literally hook it onto the next one. It slots underneath, securing it to itself. And then the fixing, the recommended place to drive the fixing down is through the top, through the highest point, down into your timber or steel. You've got to specify what you're having, frame underneath. All right, so that seems pretty simple, doesn't it? So what am I all stressing about? Well, there's a couple of things, to be honest, and it's mainly in regards to trim, because I've had this here now for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and I've been over-analysing, stressing, looking at it going, I don't know how this is going to work. So let me show you the 4 different types of trim that come with it, 5 actually, and then also the issues I think we're going to have tomorrow and how we're going to get around them. Right, first bit of trim I want to show you is this one here. Now this is called, if you look on your drawings, your schematics, this is called the drip edge. All right, and this actually goes under the panels at the back. Again, didn't know that, I'm so thankful I checked this out before the actual first panel went on. So I think the plan tomorrow is we're going to get the first panel on and in place, and then lift it up slightly just to slot this one in, and this will run flush at the back. So this is for rain runoff really, and I think for where the guttering going to go. So that one's called the drip edge, and as I say, that goes under the back of the bottom part of the panels. Now the other bits of trim are called the honor pitch, the bridge board, and the water deflector. Now this is the issue I had where I started over-analysing and overthinking things before even the first panel's gone up. And my issue is this was, the recommendation, as I say, is to put it in the longest part of the trapezoid, the fixing. So if we were to fix that in and down, perfectly on the top, and then we put our cap thing on the top, like so, oh, very good. So when you come to put the trim on, it's not going to sit flush to the roof because it's going to be that much higher. Okay, and Philip acknowledged this at Panel Cell. So what he suggests, what I'm actually going to do, what we're going to do first, is we're going to get the first panel up, and then we're going to install, we're going to put fixings in the lower portion, so the lower part of the, not in the high ridge, in the lower section, just to fix it in place. And then when the flashing actually goes on, this fixing is going to go right through the trim and the high part of the panel for an extra fixing as well, if that makes sense, because otherwise the trim itself isn't going to go flush on. So I think that makes sense, and that's my idea in my head tomorrow anyway. So the other bits, because again, it doesn't tell you in the kind of instructions, if you like. I'll show you the other parts. There is the barge board. Now the barge board are for the side parts of your building. Okay, so they are the longest part on the roof section on the top. Now the idea is it will hook around the second trapezoid, if you like, so it goes right along to the second one, and then you can use either the smaller fixings or a combination of those and the larger ones. The ono pitch, or the on a pitch trim, is for the front part, for the highest part, and these are all made to order, by the way. They take in the angle of your build and stuff. So the on a pitch one goes on the front, and the water deflector goes on the back, above the panel where you've got the drip edge, which is underneath. That's my understanding of how it works, and fingers crossed tomorrow I've got my brother coming up and Pam's dad's coming up to help me as well, because these panels, just for your reference as well, so the 80mm panels at 3.75 meters are about 70 kilos each. Okay, so they are heavy without being ridiculously heavy, certainly not one arming them up myself type heavy, but they are manageable. I think if you had 2 or 3 of you, it should be okay. What it also doesn't tell you in the instructions is where your starting point should be on the panels themselves. Should you start with the flat part or with the hook part? Now again, if I bring you back down to show you here, this bit here, this hook bit there, that is going to be just on the outside of the first wall that we're going to install. So the fixings are going to go in and around and about here, I think, all right, or maybe just a little bit further in, because then the barge board can actually sit on that and then over the second one. So the trim stuff should go on nice, but again, it doesn't say where your first panel should be, or whether it should be this part, that's the first bit, or this part. So we're going off this section here as our first part, and then working our way along, clicking them in and hooking them in. So that's the plan for tomorrow. I think I've pretty much covered everything. Oh, these things here, yeah, the foam fillers, they go under the front of the underside of the on a pitch roof. So on the front bit, it's to stop debris or something coming up and over the top. So when you get them, and I didn't even know, I hadn't a clue what they were, they just fit in underneath the flashing, underneath the trim on the top part on the on a pitch roof. So I hope that explains it all. There is very, very little information for DIY type, garden room type folk out there on how to install these. If you Google it, or if you put into YouTube, you might get a 9-year-old Italian video which is showing a little bit, I think it's Italian anyway. So that's why I've taken the time to talk you through for like 6 or 7 minutes before I've even lifted a panel into place. Because what's going to happen tomorrow, we're going to have a camera set up, and that's pretty much going to be it. There's going to be no fancy angles, no fancy camera work or anything, because I'm calling in favours, folk coming in to help me, but also we need to get this done really. I just need to crack on, and we're just going to take it from 1, maybe 2 angles and just sort of demonstrate how we're going to go about doing it. And then the flashing, if I can try and get some angles up on the top to show you as we go along. So say no fancy camera work on this one, no fancy angles or anything. It's simply just going to be let's get this roof in place, keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. Right, I'm pretty sure I'm set up for tomorrow. I'm going to put my feet up tonight because it's going to be a very busy day. I will show you some angles of the on a pitch stuff and the barge board. Hopefully I'm shown on that, and then let's hope for the best. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. If you've been following me on social media, you see I've had to make a change to the design at the top where the panels are. Now, obviously, I was always going to put an extra supporting piece of timber across which the actual roof panels were going to sit on, but originally they were going to be the joists, and the joists, the actual bit at the top was going to be flat, and the joists were going to lean to with a little cutout in them. Obviously, I can't do that with the sit panels, so what I've done is the actual supporting timbers across the top, I've put them on a slight angle. It's only 6 degrees, but I put packers on one side and expanding foam, just a little bit showing you now, just to create that angle so the panel itself will sit flush to the timber. So when I'm driving the fixings in, you're not running the risk of like the panel kind of, you know, shaping or missshaping or warping. I don't know what the proper term is. So I think that's pretty much right what I've done. So I've got them down the side and the back and across the front as well. So those timbers are already in place. So hopefully when the first panel goes up tomorrow, it will sit flush onto them, which will allow me to drive the fixings in nice and easy. It's not going to be like that, is it? Let's hope so though. And I think that's a pretty appropriate time to bring this part of the roof build, this episode, to a conclusion. As well as the bigger series of the modular workshop build, this part, the roof construction, was always going to be in two parts. Actually getting the roof panels on, and then the next episode is going to be how I'm going to cut the length of the roof panel to get the final piece in, and also installing all the trim and the edging as well. There's a few little bits and pieces that didn't crop up on the actual build video from yesterday. I'm now under my nice roof, it's looking really good. A couple of few little bits and pieces. Firstly, on the underside of the hook, there is a piece of foam and there is a bit of material that needs pulling away from that before you hook it on. In terms of actually installing the fixings themselves, please do it this way. Center punch first, then pre-drill before driving the fixings through. And because my brother was actually doing the punching and the drill driving and stuff, if anyone's got any ideas how to do a one-handed center punch, I'd greatly appreciate it in the comments, because I can't figure it out. Yeah, so follow it that way. What we actually did do yesterday was just put 2 fixings on the front and 2 on the back, just to get them locked solid and in place. And now I'm going back to obviously apply plenty more to get it completely tightened down. The first panel, goes without saying, is absolutely crucial you get it spot on in terms of either if you've got an overhang or it's terms in being in position, even if you're only a centimetre half out. If you're going across the length of 7.5 metres or even longer, and you don't get that first one right, it will come back to bite you further down. So we spent the best part of nearly an hour getting the first panel on, and then the other 6 panels we done in just under 2 hours. So it was 3 hours in total to get 7 panels on, which is incredible really, if you think about the time it would take to put a traditional roof up, shall we say. Yeah, so first panel, make sure you get that spot on. Make sure about the center punch and the pre-drilling to get the fixings in. Was there anything else? Oh yeah, when you get the panel up and in place, there or thereabouts, you don't want to be pushing it up forward and backwards, trying to get it a couple of mil, because it was just taking forever. So what we did, we got it as close as we could, and then just at the back, just a small block of wood and a hammer, and just to tap it up into place, just for that final, get it absolutely spot on, to get it aligned. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, I don't really make any apologies for the camera, the filming yesterday. And I kind of do apologise a little bit for the giant monologue at the start, but I think it's really important, if you are thinking of doing this, it's really important to have it explained what the process is, as well as actually demonstrating it as well, because there were so many things that I had no idea about when these dropped on me a couple of weeks ago, and I've had to do my research. I've constantly been on the phone to Philip at Panel Cell. Thank you, Philip, if you're watching. And I just thought I could share my conversations with him, with you, and that might give you a bit more of a guided idea about whether Panel Cell, whether these sit roof panels are for you or not. I will also, at the end of episode 2, go into a detailed costing of it, and I'll also compare it to what it would cost against a traditional roof. I think that's important, people want to know that, but I'll do that in the next episode, which will probably be in a couple of weeks, folks, because I've got a lot of work to do. Okay, as ever, everyone, take care, look after yourselves, and I'll see you soon. Thanks very much.